Hey guys, I'm doing a Reading Rage Inc. live, and I'm alive! It's alive! It's alive! And since it's Halloween, I have my bee wings on because I've been a busy bee. And I am gonna move some of my work stuff. So sorry that you guys have to see my work table. Over here. I'll just move that so I feel better about you looking at my workstation. And that was my Longlegs impression because I'm gonna do a movie review today of Longlegs. And that's my cat right next to me. So thanks so much for being here. And I'm going to try and make it as quick as possible. I was trying to do this in time for Halloween. Halloweenkies. And I know you guys are probably partying out there, but if anyone wants a movie analysis of probably one of my favorite movies that I've seen so far this year, then here you go. So I do want to say that I saw it twice and absolutely got so much more out of it this second time I saw it. I'll just be honest. The first time you're seeing it, you're trying to analyze everything and really just take it all in. There's so many details that it was extremely benefiting to see it a second time. And the second time it blew my mind. And I don't think this review would have been the same if I hadn't seen it the second time. I'll just be completely freaking honest, man. So I have my Instagram facing this way and then my YouTube facing this way, and I'm like, hey, my bee wings. So yeah, I've been a busy bee. I tried to get this out sooner, but honestly, I'm glad I didn't because this wouldn't have been the same review if I hadn't seen it twice. The first time I saw it, shout out to Alamo Draft House here in San Antonio, Park North. They slay, slay queens. And the second time I saw it, I watched it from Regal Cinemas. And so I saw it at a Regal theater, and I really loved it. Because it was released the first time, right? And I saw it when it was released the first time in theaters, and I saw it from Alamo Draft House. And then the second time I saw it, they re-released it just recently, and I guess because I follow a lot of movie profiles and things like that I got a special ad on Instagram, and it was saying that there was a director's interview at the end of Longlegs and that it was re-released. And so I jumped on that as soon as I found out. And so thanks, Regal, for bringing that special director's commentary interview edition to theaters again for Longlegs. Yeah. And I realize now that Longlegs is all one word, so excuse me if I have it in 2 words in the description of my Instagram or my YouTube. I think I fixed it, but I want to go into it right now, and I'm going to try and make this as short as possible because it's the midnights and it's alive, and everybody needs to go party or go to work tomorrow. So I hope you like this. I guess I'm going to start out with the director and writer, Osgood Perkins. Oz Perkins. I know him from from Not a Scary Movie. I know him from Legally Blonde, and I didn't realize it was him until I saw the director's commentary, that director's interview, and then they started talking about his new film, Monkey, the Monkey, and it's a horror film based off of a Stephen King story. And so I'm watching him, at the end of Longlegs in this interview, and I'm thinking, God fucking damn it. He looks, sorry kids, he looks just like that hot guy from Legally Blonde, the one that she Elle Woods talks to and like defends in front of the stuck-up girls, I don't know, women. And so sure enough, as I'm doing research for my review, turns out that I was correct and that it's him. But he has a wealth of movies under his belt that he's done before and since then. And so I was actually really excited to learn that one of his first movies that he was ever in was Psycho. I think it was Psycho 2. And then and he started in that when he was like really young. He's actually from like a prolific family. And I won't go into that. If you're interested, you can go check that out. But I was talking to a old friend of mine, and we were just had all this synergy about Longlegs, and he was like, if you've never seen, because I started comparing it to Mandy, and that's the big reason why I was so excited about this film, because I loved Nicky Cage in Mandy, and so I started comparing this movie to Mandy and how I thought it was going to be very much like it, and how my review was going to be kind of based around that. And he just kind of stopped me and was like, if you've never seen Osgood Perkins' other films, he's like, then you need to. Like, if you've never seen The Blackcoat's Daughter, he's like, you have to see that one, and then you'll understand his style of directing a little bit more. And so yeah, he's worked on a few other horror films like The Blackcoat's Daughter and I Am the Pretty Thing That Lives in This House. So I just wanted to give a shout out to that. And he's also been in like Star Trek and like things like that, that he's just like cameoed in. But The Blackcoat's Daughter, he actually directed. Okay, on from that, because I don't want to take too much time talking about that so much as what this film reminds me of. If you like serial killer films like The Zodiac and Red Dragon, it is very reminiscent of that. And then I know that Nicolas Cage was also in a serial killer film with Mr. Cusack, and I think it's called The Frozen Ground. And so that one is amazing. If you've never seen The Frozen Ground, they both do impeccable. So it's nice to see how Nicolas Cage can be so diverse in being the detective in the true crime, but he's also very good at being the bad guy, right? And so we see him play that good guy, in essence, our anti-hero, our good guy in Mandy, and we see him in Frozen Ground, which is also a serial killer film where John Cusack is a serial killer. It's really awesome. And then we see those elements of these serial killers coming into this film. And so in a little while, after probably I go through more of the cinematography elements that I noticed and I really liked, and the foils in the different characters that I really liked, I do want to touch on a little bit more about Longlegs' character, how I feel he can be similar to other masked villain serial killers that we've seen in a lot of horror movies through the ages, through the decades. And so, yeah, I did want to continue going into kind of Osgood Perkins, his choice in marketing, his choice in his writing, and then the actual end product that we saw. If you got to see it, if you haven't seen it, there will be spoilers, just so you know. So the marketing of this film was different, and it was awesome. So I got a friend that texted me a phone number because we were talking about Longlegs. And I think it wasn't at that moment that they texted me the number, but they were just like, here, call this number. And I'm an automatic skeptic. And so I kind of just wasn't sure what to expect. And when I called it, it was eerie, it was creepy, it was a voicemail. It goes straight to someone's voicemail, and it's one of the teasers for Longlegs. And so I call this number, and it's Nicolas Cage, and it's his voice recording in character of Longlegs. Amazing. And just getting to learn how people do marketing. They called it guerrilla marketing, but as I was looking at all of the previews for Longlegs, it was so interesting because they do give you like little hints. They didn't want to give you too much at one time, right? The first preview I saw was short and kind of mysterious. You didn't know exactly what was going on. Then the next preview that they released was just a little bit more of that first preview, but they give you a little bit more. And so it was just like little by little, they're edging you to get more curious and more creeped out. It was awesome. So then I'll go into how I read some interviews, right? About this movie and that Osgood Perkins conducted. And one of the things that stood out to me was the fact that he said in the beginning of this film, he added some scenes that his producers specifically said you need to add in order to orient people to the main character a little bit more and how she is intuitive, clairvoyant, what have you, how she's connected to things. And so Maika, God, Jesus, I apologize, dude. Monroe was Lee Harker, our main final girl in this film, and Nicolas Cage is Longlegs. And so Osgood Perkins is the director and the writer, but his producers heavily just influenced this movie. And I say heavily because I don't know if I would have added the scenes that his producers told him to add. And he said that he added them because the producers didn't want the first scene to be where she is doing her intuition tests for the FBI. She's in a room, they're showing her images. It's a Rorschach test, if you will, where they give you images and then you have to say the first thing that comes to your mind. And so I think the movie would have hit a little bit differently if the Rorschach image test would have been the first thing that people would have seen. I think the movie would have hit very differently. And it maybe would have given away a little bit more, or maybe audience members would have picked up on the key Easter eggs and all of the foreshadowing elements that Rorschach image test really gives the audience. And I didn't catch it the first time, but the second time I watched it, it all clicked. It all clicked, and for the most part. And so, yeah, Monroe Lee Harker is Lee Harker. Nicolas Cage is Longlegs. Blair Underwood, sexy Blair Underwood, of course, sexy Nicolas Cage also. Blair Underwood is Agent Carter, and that's Lee Harker's boss. He's like the captain. And then Alicia Witt is Ruth Harker, one of our antagonists in the film. And then we have Agent Browning, who is our surrogate mother figure, who is almost like the good mother figure in the film. And good is subjective, and we'll go into that in a second also. And then, of course, we have Carrie on camera, and that's Kiernan Shipka, who I know as Sabrina the Teenage Witch from the remake that is more based off of the Archie comics. And I've been a fan for, like several years now. And so it was awesome to see her character in this film. And the first time I saw it, I liked her character, but the second time I saw it, I picked up on so much more of what her character was saying to Lee Harker when they have their personal interview together. So the first time I didn't really get it, but then the second time I realized how much she knew and was letting, and how she was really a mirror of Lee Harker, right? And exposes her in a lot of ways to herself, right? And so music was actually by Elvis Perkins, Osgood Perkins, the director's brother. And then the producers are C2 Motion Picture Group, and then Saturn Films, which was, I think, founded in 2000 by Nicolas Cage. And so then we have just a wealth of other cast members who are really amazing, and I won't go into all of that. But I just wanted to go into those things for a little bit, introduce you to who the cast and crew is. And then I did want to say that I love the way that Perkins starts the movie out. He has this red color, which is so different than the cinematographer's choice of colors. It's actually in complete opposite. I feel like our cinematographer, he chooses like sepias as very key colors, and like seafoam greens and teals, these cool colors, and that both represent the mother and the father figure, these goldens and these teals and these seafoams, right? And each chapter is in stark contrast to that. It's a bright red. And I feel like that is Lee Harker's color when she's a child. If you see her in their flashbacks, she's wearing this red coat, sweater. And that is the one of the only times we really see a bright red color is on Lee. And so we think each chapter is her discovering something, and it's indicative of her, maybe, perhaps. And then the sepia color is, I feel like, indicative of our busy bee, Longlegs, because each time I feel like we see him, he's either in this like pale white, right? Or when they're foreshadowing something like a clue, it's like a sepia color that we see, like a haunting light from above below, right? Going above below in a lot of ways. And so that's something that plays a role. And then when we look at the teals and the sea foams, it does have to do with Lee Harker's mother, Ruth. And when you go to Ruth's house, Lee's mom's house, our final girl and her mother, who is her main antagonist, we do see the seafoam green, that teal, light teal color that she, when she is alluded to, or it foreshadows her involvement with Longlegs, we see that teal seafoam green color, right? And so I feel like those are the main colors that we see. And then I saw Agent Lee Harker, our final girl, in like some browns, some mauves, very earthy colors, very muted colors. And her spirit is very muted. And that is a metaphor, I feel like, for what is happening to her mentally and what has happened to her due to her PTSD and her trauma as a child from witnessing everything that she's witnessed in her family. And so I thought that the imagery and the color palettes were beautiful. The way that they put them in the film to indicate different characters and foreshadowing different characters was really awesome. So I'll go into that in a second. And so I'll go back to the Rorschach image test because I want to go from the beginning kind of to the end, sort of. And so the category I wanted to go into was like this imagery that's in the film, and how when she's doing her Rorschach image test with the FBI, she says when she sees certain things, she says the word camera, the word father, the word mother, the word piano, which are all leading to key clues. It's like Blue's Clues. Did you ever watch Blue's Clues when you were younger? No? Am I the only one? That's fine. I was way too old to be watching it, but I thought I love a good mystery. And so, yeah, so she's like, says camera to objects that don't really remotely look like a camera, right? And then when you see a triangle appear, she says father. So that ties into how Longlegs is, in my humble opinion, her father. Oh, I'm going to take a little break to drink Bigelow tea. Because you know we're gigolos for Bigelow. So thank you to our unofficial not sponsor, who's not sponsoring me, but hopefully will eventually sponsor me. Because I'm a busy bee, and busy bees need tea. So this is Lemon Zinger. It's a lemon ginger plus probiotics. So refreshing. Bigelow tea. Okay, so anyways, if you want to sponsor me, Bigelow tea, I'm right here. So when we go to this Rorschach image test, there's so much foreshadowing, and I just think to myself, we see her in the beginning of the film with these scenes that the producers told him to add to the director Perkins. I told myself that I would only take 30 minutes, and it's 22 minutes in. I'll speed up. And so what happens is she is new to the Bureau, I think. And we see this because I didn't really understand the first time I saw it, but the second time I saw it, this is what I've deduced. There is another killer that they're trying to find. And she's able to find him. She gets assigned to a more experienced FBI agent. And they go out to this house. And she's able to sense what house he's in. She asks for backup, and her partner doesn't trust her. And so he goes to go look by himself, and though she's just like very nervous, she pushes forward, right? So she's really scared, but she's still like very. Bravery is not, I guess I've heard the term, bravery is not having no fear whatsoever. It's having fear, but doing what you have to do despite being afraid, right? And so I just wanted to say that. So though she's scared, she still does what she has to do in order to be able to get through this mission. Her partner ends up getting his head blown off at the very beginning of the film, and she goes in and she apprehends this killer. It's not Longlegs, but it leads her to being, in essence, promoted to the point where she is able to see to the point where she's able to see this agent. I'm sorry, I got a message on my phone, and I just wanted to discard it. But yeah, so she gets promoted, and that leads her to become the agent where she is on this really important case, right? And so we see that after she gets into this case, sorry, I thought I was filming on my Instagram live, and turns out I'm not, so I'm going to have to do this again on there. I apologize. It's okay. So we see that the mother figure is there, and that the piano is next to her chest of drawers, that she has a very huge clue in that helps her understand her family's connection to Longlegs and her connection to Longlegs. And I thought that this character that she apprehended at the beginning of the film that gets her promoted to get onto the Longlegs case was Longlegs the first time for some reason, or that it was connected to the Longlegs case, but it wasn't. It just shows how intuitive she is. And so when she ends up going to this new case, it's almost like she was led there. And I think she was led there because Agent, what's his name? Agent Carter, her boss, who's played by Blair Underwood, is, I think, really has been watching her, and he is connected to Longlegs as well. And I didn't get that until the second time I saw it, how connected he is, and how I think Longlegs somehow, I don't know how, honestly, brought them together on purpose. And that's just like my hypothesis. Don't take my word for it. Just watch it a few times, and then you might see that that's true. So I really enjoyed that he gave all these Easter eggs, because then you get to see the whole film, and then you think that they're all connected. She does say the word tiger at one point. So she says camera, father, mother, piano. All of those things are connections to the murders and to clues that have to do with the Longleg case. But then she says tiger, and I haven't figured out what tiger means. And so if you want to leave in the comments what you think tiger means, I would love that. I personally think that it has to do with Nicolas Cage and Mandy, and that it's another little Easter egg, and I could be wrong. So Nicolas Cage and Mandy has this shirt that both his wife, lover, partner, I don't know, his partner wears, and that he wears, and they both wear, because they really love this shirt. And she gets kidnapped, she gets murdered by a cult, and he goes and revenges her. Well, at first he goes to save her, and then she gets murdered. And so you have to see the film. It's like one of my favorite films of probably all time. It's a cult classic, but it's a cult classic. You gotta see Mandy. And so when they say tiger, I really can't figure out what that's about, but I think maybe it's alluding to Mandy and to Nicolas Cage, because he's the tiger. Also, when we see Longlegs in his hideout, switch now for any more spoilers if you don't want any more spoilers. When we see him in his hideout, he has this like zebra print like pillowcases. And if you think of that, in my opinion, he's the hunter, he's the tiger, and he's hunting, right? And so that could be that, and it could be something else. It could be any of these things, right? And so I'm not really sure what tiger means. I'm still speculating about it. If you got any ideas, I am up for ideas, okay? Up for ideas. And then I wanted to say that there's this other imagery piece, right? The lights and the windows. So I talked to you about the colors, right? The sepias, the teals and the, like seafoam greens. But then I want to talk to you about how the windows and the lights play a big part in this film. So we see several shots from far away through a window or two windows, right? And the windows play such key roles. When we see that Lee Harker, Agent Harker, and her boss, Agent Carter, are going to investigate the camera house, where this is one of the grisly murders that took place about a decade or so before, a little less, I think. And so they decide to drive over there in the middle of the night after she cracks kind of the algorithm of the fact that every murder happens on the 14th, right? And all these daughters have their birthdays on the 14th that are murdered, and their families are murdered. And so they go to this house, and they see that there's this barn. And so they decide to go to the barn, and she says, X marks the spot, right? But it's like these X's are kind of a little elongated, and they're a little sideways to the point where it looks like crosses, like fallen crosses. And they're like this on the barn door. And so we see these fallen crosses, not these X. I mean, her X's mark the spot, right? But they're these tilted fallen crosses. And so she stands there, and she's shining the light, and you have this kind of like sepia lighting in the dark. But as they're walking towards the barn, right before that scene where she sees those X's, it's a wide shot, and the camera pans across the whole camera house, and it's dusk, and the light's fading, but there's still a little bit of sky blue in the background. And it's all, the light doesn't go through any of the windows on a certain part of the house. But then there's another part of the house where there's a set of windows. I mean, there's windows throughout the whole house, but it's all dark except for this certain part of windows where two of the windows, the sky from through the windows shines through just a sliver on each window, to the point where there's this light blue that comes through each window, and it looks like eyes. It like literally looks like eyes shining in the darkness through these windows, right? And it happens more than once that the camera does this with the windows and the lighting, right? And so we see that was, I feel like, the presence of her mother's eyes almost watching through, or just like indicative of that her mother's been there, right? Oops, spoiler. And then they go to the barn, and as soon as Agent Carter opens the barn door, it's only one door, and the sepia lighting, yellow lighting, is coming from behind him through. There's a shed in back of him, which I notice in, I think, another scene that there's like a shed, but I haven't really touched on that yet, and I haven't really like taken too much thought about that. I just noticed it. I'm not going to touch on it because I haven't really analyzed it. But you just see him open this barn door, and sepia lighting, this yellow lighting, is coming from behind him through the one single doorway. And so we see that he goes in with Harker, and then they go up the stairs, and then they find, again, this sepia lighting coming through and shining down on them as they open the floorboard where a cross is. And it turns out that they find the doll that is Carrie Camera's doppelganger, which I feel is really interesting, because not only do we have these color palettes, but we also have this eeriness about it, and these like pastoral views of wide landscapes, whether it's winter or whatever it is. I mean, you see these wide landscapes with these farmhouses and these pastures. It is very Gothic horror. So we see that, and then if you've looked at any of my other reviews, doppelgangers, twins, things of that nature, duplications, those are key elements in a Gothic film. Pastoral landscapes are key element in Gothic films. And I have a review or paper coming that goes into modern day Gothic settings. And so I'm not going to touch on that too much, but I do feel like a lot of these reviews that I've been doing are very Gothic horror because of the setting that it's in. And so they find this doll, and that, I feel like, it is one of the scenes with the windows and the light shining and the sepia, which is very indicative of Longlegs. I feel like Longlegs' color is that yellow, that sepia. And when we see him in his basement, it is very gloomy. It is kind of that gloomy color. And that leads me to another scene where she's in her house and she's trying to crack the code. And then we see through the windows, like it's always like looking through the veil. And there's this like almost like yellow lighting shining from her when she's studying the book. Maybe she's actually at the bureau and she's going through the 9 gates of hell. And that's the scene where she's still at the bureau and she cracks the code because of the 9 gates of hell book that she has. And as she cracks the code, right before that, we see this like 2 pair of yellow lights from outside. And it's just lighting, but it looks like eyes looking at her through the window. And it's not actually eyes. It's like an actual light, like light bulbs, right? But it's shining through the window in such a way that the director makes the choice to have it in such a way that he has these eyes that are constantly watching her, right? And then as soon as she cracks the code, there's this like outline of like a goat head and like man figure, like just the outline. And it like dissipates very quickly. I mean, like suddenly, so suddenly that I believe I didn't catch it the first time I saw the film. Caught it the second time I saw the film. I'll just say that. And so I was like, oh my God, I didn't catch that the first time. But I will go into what I really think that means, in my opinion, my humble opinion. I think that, but I want to go through this rather quickly. And so, when Cobble is actually Longlegs, we find out his name is Dale Cobble, which is so interesting because cobble is like, you think of a road, you think of a path, a cobble path, but then you also think is he laying roads for people that all connect to each other, that connect to what he wants. And then we think of a cobbler who makes things, who makes shoes, right? Makes shoes that have soles. And then he makes dolls that apparently have their own almost souls. Souls of possession, souls of the devil, that he wants people to believe that, at least, right? So that's very interesting, that his name is Cobble and that he makes things and he threatens people with souls and possession. And so when he's apprehended finally on the side of the road and he goes into, the FBI finally has him. He has a single window behind him where the eyes, as I said, have been between two windows, shining through like double windows. Whenever his presence is there, I feel like, and I could be off, it's a single window. And so he's sitting there, and it's really interesting the way he's balanced, with just like two walls and then a single window behind him and the light shining through. And we see that when he's of one mind, he's of one window, there's only one path for him, and he's like, it's almost like a saint halo around him, which I feel has to do with his like God complex and his like need for control and things of that nature. But versus the two windows. And then just the discussing of the blue, when the windows and the colors, the blue is representative of his, I feel, his stolen wife, his chosen wife, which is Ruth Harker. And that's the mother and father figure of Lee Harker, who have kind of like molded her into the person she is. And when she first cracks part of the code, before she understands the alphabet, she figures out that the deaths are on the 14th and that all these girls have that in common and their parents have that in common. They have a daughter that has a birthday on the 14th. And when she's trying to explain this to Agent Carter, he's like, let's go have a drink. And so they end up going to, I guess, like a bar, and he's drinking and she's not. And as she's sitting there, behind her are two women with their backs to her, right? Because they're facing the opposite sofa. And so they're like almost back to back, but they're sitting next to her in the couch behind her. And they're either like flight attendants or flight stewardesses, and they're wearing this like almost like light blue, green seafoam hat, right? They're both wearing the same uniform. And that's at the point in time where they're talking about how Longlegs is somehow committing these murders without ever being there because there's no physical evidence. But there's a letter with these cryptic language that's a code that's made up. But he is somehow never there when the murders are taking place. So they're debating, how is this happening? And Agent Carter says, well, what about like Charles Manson. Sorry. What about Charles Manson? He was able to influence people to commit murders without actually being there. He didn't commit the murders himself. Somebody else did on his behalf. And Agent Harker goes, oh, yeah, he had his family. His family helped him, which is also a foreshadowing, right? And then we have that blue seafoam green color behind her that you think to yourself, oh, once you connect the dots, she's talking about her mother and, in essence, herself. Because I believe she gives her mother information, potentially, to the point where that helps Longlegs, in my opinion, but that goes unsaid, right? And there's so much in this film that goes unsaid. There's these things that you have to read between the lines that nobody wants to admit anything because they're so like afraid. They're afraid of Longlegs. They're afraid of being connected to this case because they're afraid that if they admit it, then they're next, or that it's like an implication of some sort. It's really, really amazing, the silences and what's not said and what that means in the film. And so that is really interesting, and I wanted to go. And when I finally saw that, I thought that was extremely interesting. And so I'll go into other imagery. Nicolas Cage and his imagery, which he does, his body movements, he made those himself. He decided what he would do, and Osgood Perkins loved the idea and said, okay, you do that. That's what we want. And so he does these hand motions when he sees Lee when she's little and her mom, right? And he does these body motions, and he does a song that he sings in order to hypnotize, bewitch, and start his process of hypnosis on Lee Harker and Ruth Harker, her mother. And so the fact that Nicolas Cage came up with these little nuances to his character, I think is so poignant, because that is Longlegs. That is his character. That is the point of the hypnosis, right? And so so he has these body movements, not only in that scene where he's talking to Ruth Harker and little Lee Harker, he also does it when he is in custody with the FBI after he's apprehended. He's sitting there talking to Lee, and he's doing this, like, if you've seen it, it's incredible. He's doing this like body movement where he's like talking to her, and he's going like this. And it's almost like he's possessed, and like this is coming out of him, but it's, I don't think it's about possession, and I don't think it's about the devil, and I'll go about that in a bit, but I think it's about hypnosis. I think it's about mind control. I think it's about propaganda. I think it's about brainwashing. And this idea of like, he already knows people are scared out of their minds from him. That he already has control, even, and maintains that control. He's a control freak, right? Longlegs, obviously, you can tell that. But he maintains his control and is able to use that when he's hypnotizing people in general. And he uses his song. Why do you think he sings the happy birthday song? Why do you think he sings songs what he's trying to tell people to do? Why do you think that when Ruth Harker goes to each person's house, it's not just the brain that's the metal ball that has a frequency inside the doll's head that is allowing the hypnosis and the mind control? It's not just that frequency. I really don't believe it's just that. I believe that it's also the rhythm, the cadence, the voice inflection, the tone, and the frequency and pitch of Ruth Harker's voice. And so he trains her on how to do it. And so thus it like completes this hypnosis, and she's able to subliminally get them to do what she wants, right? And so even when she's sitting there at the end, she's dictating what they're going to do to each other. So they're already under hypnosis. And she says, the mom's as good as dead. the dad's going to take her and he's going to stab her or whatever. She is already dictating to them what they're going to do, right? And so I really believe that it's not necessarily, I think it's all PTSD, it's all trauma, and it's all brainwashing, right? There is no devil in this film. It's people. And I want to go into that in a second, but I mean, it could be both, right? But I definitely think it's not just possession. I think it's more science-based, personally, in my opinion. And that's why I like this film so much, because it has to do with trauma and it has to do with PTSD. It has to do with domestic violence and how that's so powerful when people are isolated and they don't have anyone to turn to, and how victims can be easily get Stockholm syndrome, feel like they can't reach out for help. And so I do want to go into that. And if you need help of any kind and you're in San Antonio, please feel free to contact the Rape Crisis Center. Please feel free to call the Child Bereavement and Center. If you have children that are going through something, Family Violence Prevention Center. Those are 3 in San Antonio that you can call. If you're having suicidal thoughts, please call 988. That is a United States hotline for not just suicide prevention and intervention, but if you're having any sort of mental health and behavioral health crisis, you just dial, just like 911, you dial 988, and that will help you get to someone that can speak to you if you are feeling like depressed, if you were having some sort of thoughts, if you need someone to talk to, mental health crisis, behavioral health crisis, or suicide prevention. Please feel free to reach out to somebody. If you feel like you live in a home with, like Ruth Harker, who had her partner, Longlegs, living in the basement, watching her every move, there are resources out there for you if you were in a domestic violence situation. You can call the Family Violence Prevention Center. You can also schedule a Zoom meeting, and they have special browsers that if you press a space bar, even one click, it will close out the browser completely. And you, if say someone walks in, your child walks in, and you don't want them to know you're going through counseling or trying to get help, if your partner walks in or someone in your family that is being abusive to you, please do not feel like you cannot reach out. There are people there to help you. And that's just here in San Antonio. And there are other places around you that can assist you. Texas 211, if you dial 211, that goes to the United Way hotline, and you can ask for behavioral health assistance, rental assistance, utility assistance, and then counseling assistance. All of these things. If you are a veteran, va.gov. If you are feeling some sort of way that you were angry, you feel like hurting yourself or others, please get help. There's no reason to hurt anybody. Okay. And so that just reminds me of just how people can feel like Stockholm syndrome, this film, how they feel like they have no options and they're isolated. She even tells Lee Harker when she's a little girl, she goes, and no one came to visit us ever. No visitors, no family, no one. And it's so sad. I caught that the first time, obviously, and the second time you catch a different meaning to that. Like she's trying to get this horrific memory of seeing her mother tied up on the floor, hogtied, and being raped and almost murdered by Longlegs. She wants to erase it from her daughter's memory. It's so catastrophic to that family, obviously, that they don't want to talk about it ever. They never want to talk about it, and they try and protect each other from it. Both Lee tries to protect her mom, and her mother, obviously, the whole time tries to protect her. And so when you see just that, I wanted to let you know that I think that it's not just the eyes through the window. It's very much, yes, a director's choice. But I think it's to add to the creepiness, to the uncanniness, to the fact that there is an evil that has happened there, but it's not necessarily, I think it's for the audience, not necessarily for the characters in the film. Sometimes is one opinion that I have of it. I'm not saying that's my final opinion. I'm saying that that's one possibility, right? And so with this snake-like movements from Nicolas Cage, that wasn't very snake-like. Is this more snake-like? Anyways, it might be wings. It doesn't really look very snake-like, but yes, he's hypnotizing his prey like a snake hypnotizes their prey. He, when she looks at the floor in the basement, that leads to the basement in her mother's house, she senses the snake, right? So she has this image that pops into her head of snake slithering, but she doesn't go down there. Why do you think she does not go down there? Because that's her daddy, yo. That's her papa. She knows he's down there. She doesn't want to face it. She doesn't want to face that it's her mother that is the killer or an accomplice. And we never really meet Lee's father. We don't see pictures of him. We don't hear about him. Why would he choose her? How does he find her? How does he know when her birthday is? Why are all the killings centered around her, leading to her birthday? So whether he's her original biological father or not, I have not made my final decision, but I'm not taking it off the table. And so in the director's commentary, he does say something really powerful about mothers and family. And I was reading comments of people and how he was just talking about how is Ruth Harker a villain? Is she really truly a villain if she's a mother that's just trying to save her daughter, who makes this heinous pact, a devil's bargain, just so that way her daughter can grow up? There is no father figure. Why do you think this particularly worked when there was no father figure? There was no doll to be delivered for Lee. Maybe he delivered it. There was no double murder, patricide, suicide, and femicide to happen. She was the wife. She did have the daughter. And so she's the only case where there is no father. So that's something that you have to think about too, right? And so then we go into the fact that Lee is a foil to her mother, but also a mirror of her, because they both, when asked questions, are trying to help each other, trying to solve the case, trying to get Longlegs apprehended while still being brainwashed by him, while still having this Stockholm syndrome by him, right? Having this propaganda shoved down their throat, like other cultists have done, like Jim Jones and the people that had to drink the Kool-Aid and things like that. They were given propaganda in order to brainwash them to get, for hours, for like a year or so or more. like for a long time, in order to feel like they were a family, in order to feel like what they were doing was right, right? And so it's not just the devil, right? There was someone that I was listening to an interview, and they were just saying a different interview about something else, that people want to say the devil made me do it because they don't want to admit the fact that sin is, it's not something that's thrown on you. It's not something that you're influenced by an outside force. It's, there are good and bad things, and people need to make the decision of what our morals are, and everybody stands on some different ground, right? And in what situations are we going to say yes, and what situations are we going to say no? And there's so many variables, right? So where there are variables of money is involved, your life or death situation is involved. There's all these reasons why someone can commit an atrocious act or just a little small act, whatever you consider atrocious, whatever you consider small. That person is going based off of what is going to be help them and their safety, meeting their Maslow's hierarchy of needs, right? Food, shelter, water, safety, security, a roof over their head. And then once they can meet those goals, they can do other things. And so I think that's really interesting, that he was just saying, Osgood Perkins was just saying that, is she really a bad guy if what she was doing was trying to save her daughter? At the end, when she's telling Lee, she's like, I did it, and it's right because I did it to save you. That's why it was right. And basically saying, like, don't judge me. I did this all for you, right? But I think she's really just drinking the Kool-Aid, right? The Jim Jones Kool-Aid. I think she's just like, I think she's brainwashed. I think that she was hypnotized. I think that she was raped and has severe PTSD. We see that when she is young and she comes out with, and this leads me to the weapons section. She has her hair up, and it's like, I'm not going to do it, but she has her hair up and it's kind of like curled in and it's short. But then as she gets older, after her rape, after the PTSD, after the brainwashing and hypnotizing and all of the murders that she's committed in order to save her daughter, her hair's long, it's down. It is combed, but sometimes it's a little disheveled in her face. It's kind of in her face a little bit. And so we see that that's indicative of how her spirit's broken, how she is a fallen woman, right? So in literature, there's fallen women or fallen men, right? And that's to do with what has happened to them. Are they divorced, or have they had a baby out of wedlock? Have they, are they a working woman? Things of that nature. And so we see that after she's visited by Longlegs, her hair's down. It's in her face. It's kind of disheveled. But we see that when she does come out the first time and Lee's little in her little red jacket, she has a double barrel shotgun. Very phallic, very in control. And she is the matriarch. She is the protector. It definitely mirrors Lee using the gun when she is at the end, has to kill her mother in order to save Ruby, Agent Carter's daughter. She uses her gun. She takes control and is now the mother figure to protect little Ruby, since Ruby does not have any parents anymore. So when her mother comes out, Ruth, the first time, and threatens Longlegs, she has a double barrel shotgun. And she also uses this, fast forward, we'll say what, 20 years later, give or take. 20 years later, she uses this gun. 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 She uses this to shoot the doppelganger doll of Lee Harker. She shoots her daughter's doll in the head after Cobble commits suicide. And she says, and she frees her, right? Maybe. So, other than that, other than those two women, the Harkers, using guns in order to take control as a mother and the matriarch, so that way their little girls won't die. We do see that the other people in the film use knives, they use an axe, they use just like the killing of a spirit with rape, and I think Longlegs rapes Ruth Harker, and that's very phallic, right? So when we think of someone splitting someone open, it's either a raping and a killing of someone's spirit, or it's the actual killing with an axe and with a knife, right? And so we see that, and how that goes into, animals, I want to say, is the other imagery that we see. And the only animals that you see in the entire film, you don't see anybody eating at any point. You see a headless cow, which I'm trying to figure out, more about that kind of occultish imagery, if anything. And then a caged cat. And so when we're going into, that was a good transition to go into this caged cat. I'm talking to you about phallic imagery, about Stockholm Syndrome, domestic violence, and raping, right? And how these phallic images are talking about the killing of a spirit, the killing of women, right? Of daughters and mothers by a male figure, right? And so the cat caged when Lee Harker and Agent Carter go to find the family that has been murdered, and they are in their beds, and they've been there for like a month. They were supposed to go to Disneyland or something, but there was the murders, and so nobody came to check on them until like a month later. This cat, whether it was in the crate for that whole month, which I don't think so. I think they put the cat in the crate at some point. Maybe the neighbor was pet sitting for them or something, and then they came back with the cat, and then they discovered the family. But the cat, the family cat, is in the crate. So the only time we see an actual animal besides the snakes in Lee's mind whenever she thinks of Cobble is, and the headless cows that the camera father, Mr. Camera, he cuts off the heads of the cows. We see this caged cat. What does that mean? Personally, cats in Egyptian mythology represents the underworld, right? And how these families are almost like they didn't have safe passage in their death, right? They had a brutal, violent death. And then also gender mutilation. I mean, rape, right? The death of the sexual body. That these people were essentially raped, in essence, because they were killed. And then the only other animal we see is a cockroach coming out of the basement door from the Ruth Harker's house, from where Longlegs is, and he comes out. Then we see the giraffe, a picture of a giraffe on the fridge. So if you look at the fridge in Ruth Harker's house, there's a picture of a giraffe. And what do giraffes have? They have long necks and, you guessed it, long legs. So we see that though Ruth Harker is evil, our antagonist, there's sides to this, is what Perkins was saying, that she can be both. She's this mother protective figure, but she's also this woman that's, doing what she has to do in order to protect her daughter. But she still is trying to give Lee clues. And so she has the Longlegs on the fridge, the giraffe, as a clue. She has, and that's right by the basement door. She has, when Lee is saying, hey, what happened on my 9th birthday? She's like, oh, I don't know. I don't remember. Do you remember? And Lee also is like, no, I don't remember anything. So they both know what's going on, but they both don't want to say it out loud because they both know that Longlegs is right under their feet. And so they're just worried about it, frankly, and don't want to implicate each other because they don't want each other to die. And so it's just so interesting that they're both not saying and they both know. And so she goes, well, I don't have anything to tell you except go look in your room because I don't throw anything away. And so she goes to her room. Lee Harker goes to her childhood room and she finds the piano. And right next to the piano is her cabinet. She looks in the cabinet and takes home these pictures. She looks through the pictures. She finds a picture of Longlegs with her camera that she used to take a picture of Longlegs, which ties back into the camera family. And so we see that, and how her mother can't say it, and how Lee doesn't want to say it. They both don't want to say it. They don't want to implicate each other, but they're both trying to apprehend Longlegs. So there's this struggle between their own good and evil, while they don't want to hurt. She doesn't want her mom to die or get implicated, and her mom doesn't want her to die, but they also want to apprehend Longlegs, right? And we see this when Longlegs Dale Cobble is apprehended in the FBI, I guess, holding cell. He says, she's the 7th she, and she was given the choice that all of them were given, either crimson or clover. She could either bow down, all the way down, super duper down, get real down and dirty, or I'm gonna cut your fucking little people's head off or whatever, and whatever he says. So he goes, you gotta get down, you gotta get all the way down, you gotta do it. And so he also says you gotta get dirty, and you gotta clean like a mop gets dirty and cleans like a rag. And so he's still trying to hypnotize her. He's still trying to intimidate her and hypnotize her and keep her connected to him. And so she is, when he says like a rag, it's also a clue, because I feel like Longlegs wants Lee to figure out this case. He wants her to continue putting all the pieces together, because without her, she is integral to making this cycle what it is. And I'll go into that in a second. And so Dale Cobble talks about a rag. And this, if you're not mature enough, you could turn this off. But we see that when we have flashbacks of the day that Longlegs comes and Ruth Harker, he says to Ruth Harker, he's like, invite me in now and it can be nice. He's like, turn me away and I'll not come back just once, not just twice. I'll come back as many times as I like. And so she says no, obviously. She's like, nah, dude, like, you need to get out of here, bro, or whatever she says. And he leaves. But later that night, he returns, and she's in her bathroom cleaning blood off of her underwear. So she is on her period. And he comes, why? 1, because it's Lee's birthday. 2, because he's the daddy. He's the papa. And 3, because she's on her period. He's doing blood magic. If there's magic in this film, which I'm not 100% sold, but maybe. So she gets the gun. She loads the gun. She doesn't kill him, apparently, for whatever reason. We don't know. He apprehends her, ties her up, shows her a good time. What's really interesting is what he does to the phone lines. What he does to phone lines is super important. He cuts the phone line, or magically, the phone doesn't work. She can't call out. There's only landlines. It's in the 90s in Oregon, and they live out in Timbuktu, apparently. And so he does this again with the phone lines, similar to that, again at her house. Well, we don't see that until later at the very end of the film. And he's already dead. I think either the mother has a pre-recording of Longlegs' voice, just like in the marketing campaign, we have a pre-recording of Nicolas Cage's voice, and we call and we answer, and he answers, and he says the creepy stuff. I think that's indicative of the movie. I think it's not demons calling her on the phone. I think the mother pre-records Longlegs and plays it for Lee once she comes out of her coma. So that way she can go and finish the circle at Agent Carter's house. That's what I think. And so we see that when Lee comes out of her coma at the very end of the film, and she can't take the other car, so she takes Dale Cobble's, her dad's old car that's in the shed. That is already a little bit, the curtain is unveiled a little bit from the car, from the vehicle, which is very indicative also of like a metaphor. So she is taking her dad's car and using his vehicle, and screams. She screams, and you see her profile in the same way that you see Dale Cobble's profile. And I think it's the point where you realize that Dale Cobble probably had either a mother that was abusive or a killer as well, right? Something happens that you see that Lee is mirroring Cobble in that exact moment of when he screams after he goes into the hardware store and is called a gross man by the little girl behind the counter. He gets into his car and he's like, save me, mommy, save me, daddy, from this hell of living. And that's his savior complex talking, but it's also how he feels like almost like an antichrist of sorts, but shows that maybe that's that mirror of that little childhood in him, that he was abused growing up. This idea of being bullied throughout his life to the point where he feels he wants to be saved from this life that he's in. That's why he's chosen to go down the path that he's on, because he feels that's his only way out. And so when I look at also how this circle is connected, right? I want to talk to you about Ruby. And honestly, this is when I started thinking about how Agent Carter was connected to this string of murders from the beginning. Because when they're talking about the camera case, he says, "Oh, I was there back in the 80s. And he was like, "Go on, tell me." He was chosen by Longlegs, I feel, way before, right? And so, a little time for my Bigelow tea. So he was chosen by Longlegs way before. And happens that he has a daughter, right? And so when we see that he's chosen, I think he doesn't want to push asking Lee about Longlegs and her mom, because he already knows so much rides on this case and is leading to his daughter's birthday. But he doesn't want to say it. He says it in a point where he invites Lee over to his house to meet his wife, to meet his daughter, to understand what day her birthday is, even though the audience, I didn't understand that her birthday was on that same day. He wants Lee to see their family and feel a love and see a family structure that she had never had before. Also, he sees his daughter in her and how they mirror each other a lot. He is like this surrogate father to her, in essence. And I feel like Agent Browning, who's played by Michelle Choi-Lee, I mentioned earlier, is like a surrogate mother figure, or very motherly to her. And so something that I feel like she never really had too much growing up. And so when she is sitting there in Ruby's room for the first time talking to her, she picks up a headless trophy and she's like, what happened to this trophy? And she's just like, oh, she kind of brushes it off. But it juxtaposes later when she gets her life-size doppelganger doll, Ruby, on her birthday, right? Gets her life-size doll, but the head is kept on. So she says something about, as they're talking, Ruby mentions, and I want to watch the movie a third time, something about some I think dolls being tied up at the bottom of somewhere, right? And she's like, yeah, it's like when they're tied up in the bottom of somewhere. They're both very clairvoyant. And I think that's what Agent Carter is trying to figure out about his own daughter, about Lee Harker, his like subordinate agent. And that's why he wants them to meet. And this is a foreshadowing that they're going to show that the mother was tied up. And that I think Ruby senses that something happened in Lee Harker's life. And I don't know if that's clairvoyance. I don't know if that's just something that maybe the director, maybe the characters don't even know, but that the director's trying to foreshadow for the audience, right? Could be either. But it's like when Ruby's trying to talk about how Cobble tied up Ruth Harker, right? And how they juxtapose each other. Ruby juxtaposes Lee and their clairvoyance, in the fact that their birthdays are the same time frame, in the fact that everything that's unspoken. And then we see how I already talked about how the Harkers, Ruth and Lee, mother and daughter, are both trying to protect each other. They're mirrors of each other, and they both don't want to admit anything that had happened. And then I want to talk about how I watched the ending credits, and the credits, I believe, go from the bottom up instead of from the top down. So they start going from down underneath the screen, and they start going up. And that made me think about, well, yes, how Dale Cobble always talks about the man downstairs as the devil. But it also made me think of going from the end of the movie to the beginning of the movie. And I was thinking about that and how that scared me. My cat sneezed. And so how Ruby's doll was, the head was not smashed. So Ruby is not free like Lee Harker was free. Lee Harker was finally free to, one, defend herself, and she was able to shoot Agent Carter when he was under hypnosis or possession, whatever you feel. Hypnosis. And then she had to shoot her mom because her mother was about to kill. She's trying to defend Ruby. And so she goes to try and shoot the doll of Ruby, and her gun doesn't go off. Does that mean that Ruby is still under hypnosis because this ball is not, the frequency hasn't changed by being shot at? Does that mean that Ruby is the next helper in this series of Cobble murders? And does that mean that Ruby there's something wrong with her because she had no friends at her birthday party? None. No friends. She had a headless trophy, and she talks about like something being tied up, and I think it's dolls being tied up. If that's the case, is Ruby, this serious young girl, the next Cobble? Is she still hypnotized? I don't know. But I think one can indicate that she is still part of this circle and that it is not broken, even if Longlegs is killed himself in his act of final control as the puppet master, right? And so we could tell that he has this God complex. That's why he has all this plastic surgery. Perkins said it in an interview that he's this guy that had all this like failed plastic surgery, and he's not liked anywhere he goes. He's bullied, and he's shunned from society. I think he had something traumatic happen with his family growing up. So he's screaming in the car about his mother and father, about not being able to get out of this life alive, in the way that he wants to. And all of this making of the dolls, like anti-hero Barbie, or not even anti-hero, but like villain Barbie, he makes all these Barbies because he himself wants to change his face. He wants to change his appearance. He wants to be in control of his identity, his masked face, in essence, a permanent masked face. And so he has this God complex of trying to control himself, his face, his appearance, everybody around him. And I from what I know, I think Satanism is very I mean, I guess there's all these, every religion has like radicals in it. So I won't say that there aren't people that haven't done atrocious things in the name of Satanism, but I also think that there are people that are Satanists that just believe in bodily autonomy, having the right to choose, not being subjected to the will of like any god, and that they believe that they have personal power inside of them, that can be, that's good, you know, that they're powerful and that there are innate powers in them, and not necessarily for them to be using it for bad or evil. So I guess I just don't want to throw Satanists under the bus like that, because I don't know much about them, but I've heard good and bad things. So I don't know too much, and I'm not gonna say anything, but I just mean it's also about like do unto others as they do unto you. So if like someone's really nice to you, then you're gonna be nice to them. And if someone's not nice to you, you're just gonna give them back the energy that they give you. So if someone gives you a bad looking face, you're gonna give them the stink eye back, all right? I'm gonna stink eye back you, because how dare you look at me like that? Oh, you cuss me, I cuss you, cuss you, cuss me, no, cuss you. And so and there's that, you know what I mean? And so that's the lightly what I know about Satanism. So like this obviously is like a fantastical movie about like Satanists and occultists, and there are radicals in every group. You know, there are people out there that are killing Palestinians, and so, and those people say they're Christian. So I mean, like, you know what I mean. And then there's people in the name of Islam that are killing women. You know, they're not all people should be judged by the most radical of their religion, because I'm a Christian and I don't believe in killing anybody. You know what I mean? I don't care what your religion is. So I just want to say that. I'm not trying to throw Satanists under the bus here. Okay, I'm just analyzing the film a little bit, or a lot of it. But yeah, and so when he is in the hardware scene, right before he starts screaming about, you know, his like need for control and like, mommy, daddy, save me from this life that is hell, or whatever. He is, I think, yes, talking about the people he's murdered in the past that he's envisioning, that he's saving. But he's also talking about himself. And I feel like what he feels has been happening to him throughout his entire life. But when he's in the hardware scene, he does that famous, like, cuckoo, 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 with the one eye, right? Which is very occultish, the one eye type of all-seeing eye. And I already talked to you about all of that, about the color palettes, about the juxtaposing characters, how I think that it's hypnosis, not necessarily occult or the devil. And I will say this, because someone argued with me about it. They're like, what about the smoke coming out of the cracked like doll, right? Once the doll head breaks open, what about that smoke? I think it is, like I said, it could either be like not alchemy of sorts, but like it could be like a, maybe not even sulfur, but like some sort of chemical. Could be a chemical reaction, right? And that the characters may or may not see it, right? Because even, you know, like when you turn on your gas stove, there are chemicals coming out of there. Just because you can't see it, you can smell it. There are chemicals out there that you can't see or smell, right? So either it's real, like a real substance that's coming out of the doll, or, and the characters either can or cannot see it, right? That's one theory. Or it's something that's like a metaphor for the trauma and the hurt and the pain and the evil emitting, coming from the doll, right? And only the audience member can see it, that the director is just giving it to us, the audience, and not necessarily for the characters. And it's like, it's imaginary. It's not real, right? Also, I was, because I ran this by somebody, and they said, well, what about the dolls? They have the veil over them and the eyes glow like snake eyes, right? And I said, well, that could also be PTSD and hypnosis. It could be not even just that. Like, it could be, like I said, something that the director is giving to the audience to see, but isn't necessarily real, right? So it's more like a metaphor, is what I was saying. That it's a metaphor that evil is in the room, that hypnosis is in the room, that this evil presence is there, but not necessarily the devil. Just that it's that it's psychosomatic, and and it's hypnosis, and that people feel like they have to do this thing, right? So, but not necessarily that it's actually the devil. And so that's kind of where I stand on this film. But I did watch the director's commentary and interview, and I did read an interview. And so he does talk about how Cobble had plastic surgery, and that he is this guy that like worships the devil, and feels like he has to do these things, right? And I feel like, just looking at his character, I think he's bullied and probably grew up to be this like lonely, isolated person that feeds on lonely, isolated people that he feels he can target and have a pattern. And really just like, I think he's so smart. When they're doing the autopsy of the doll, the FBI agent that's doing the forensic science, he even is like astounded by Cobble. He's just like, he's super fucking smart. He's extremely talented. He's extremely smart. He is an artisan. He's a craftsman. And he's like creepily astounded. And I think he's been drinking the Kool-Aid a little bit too much. I think he's already hypnotized because of the sound of when they take an ultrasound of the metal ball, that he's like, I call it the brain. It has its own frequency. I think he's already in love with Longlegs. And I think that's how easy it is to hook someone with frequencies. So be careful what music you listen to. Be careful how close you let people get to you. Hypnosis is real. If you ever saw, and it's very on par, Late Night with the Devil, that's the idea of, is it hypnosis or is it demonic power, right? So Late Night with the Devil, they have a skeptic in there. It's very much like me. And the skeptic, he is able to on a mass scale, hypnotize a whole audience and the people on stage. And then they watch the film back, the footage, and all of the terrors that they saw were just hypnosis, right? For part of the film. And that idea of being able to hypnotize people on a mass level, you need to be careful what music you listen to. You need to be careful what shows you're watching. The media subliminally, and like, people have been trained to use hypnosis in counseling. Just like I'm sure there's people out there that are trained in hypnosis to do it for nefarious things, or because the government has hired them and they need to do it for XYZ purpose. I mean, I'm not sure what people would use hypnosis for. Honestly, I don't know. But it's brainwashing. And there are people that are really, really good at it, right? And so there's even people that aren't trained in hypnosis that are good at manipulation, right? Manipulation is something that isn't new and it isn't satanic. It's just people using gaslighting techniques, other manipulation techniques, to control people, whether it be your family, your friends, your colleagues, workers, your subordinates at your work, whether it be the media trying to do it to people for consumerism purposes. It's a thing, right? And so I think that's the idea of like when people are isolated, they're easily able to be controlled. And so so I thought that was really important. And then another thing that I wanted to talk to you about, besides the color palette and everything, is that I do want to say, I think Lee, all the unsaid stuff, when she gets the code, the secret key that Longlegs comes to her house just to help her solve the case, because that's her dad. Her dad is like, I'm going to give you the code because I kind of want you to figure out all of my letters. He's like, I've been waiting for you. Kind of like Darth Vader, but Darth Vader is actually a good guy and Longlegs is not a good guy, right? Obviously. So he gives her the code. He gets her to come out of her house. She leaves her door open. She goes out into the middle of the night with her gun instead of staying in her house, protected, because she wants him to come into her house. She allows him to, right? Which I think is the difference between her and her mother. Instead of her mother inviting Longlegs in, she rejects him. He goes away, he comes back later and forces himself in. She gets a knock at the door. She allows Longlegs in because he says, if you allow me in right now, it'll be nice. But if you don't, I'll come back not once, not twice, but as many times as I like. She leaves the door open, but keeps her gun on her and goes outside. And he comes into her house, leaves the note, and boogies on out of there, right? She goes back inside. She's fine. Closes the door, locks it, opens the letter, and has a key that he gives her, certain words, right? So that way she can figure out the whole alphabet eventually. He doesn't give her the whole alphabet. He gives her certain words. And then from there, like a crypto quip, she's able to figure it out. And so that's really poignant of talking about Kiernan and Shipka in Sabrina, the new Archie comic series. There's this episode of Sabrina the Teenage Witch, or Sabrina the Archie comic, where they have the Eldritch Terrors come from the beyond, and one Eldritch Terror looks like a homeless person who smells and is just has like maggots on him and is just like totally disheveled, and he wants refuge. He's lonely and he wants refuge. And he comes up to Harvey's house, while he and Roz are there, and she's clairvoyant. She opens the door and he's there, and it says, "Can I come in?" like a sign that's written. Or he's like, "I'm hungry, can I come in?" or something like that. And Harvey's about to say no, and she goes, "Yes, of course you can. Come on in." And he comes in and they feed him and he eats something, and then he gets up and he walks out, and they pass the Eldritch Terrors test. Do I think I would be Do I think I would pass that test? I probably wouldn't. I'm so sorry. I feel like I hope I would. I hope I would, but I don't know. And so I see that in this film where nobody accepts him into their house, but she does it intuitively. She lets him in. She leaves her door open, allows him to come in, allows him to leave the letter, allows him to leave, and then she goes back in when it's safe. There's so much in this movie that is unspoken, but that you have to pick all of these things up and put them together, that it's like you wouldn't even, you would have to, I mean, like I had to see it a couple times in order to grasp that, right? And so I thought that was really, really impressive of Perkins to do, just like these little things that you have to pick up on. And then the other thing that I wanted to go into was just that I feel like that just talks about, I think I already talked about it, but just that in literature, there's this thing called unreliable narrators, that even when they're telling a story, you know that you have to pick up that the story is not accurate, and you have to read between the lines, or that you're not going to know that the story is warped somehow, right? And then, and just that these cult classics of killers needing to have their identity kept secret, and that they want their right to choose, right? And so Longlegs, he kills himself. He's apprehended. He is not going to allow anyone to know who, I mean, like, allow his fate. So he wants to maintain control of his own body, and that's really, really important. And I think that he mirrors a lot of cult leaders, and that we see, like in another Nicolas Cage film, Mandy, which I do want to do a review on at some point. That and I've been writing about it, but I just love it so much that I want to do it justice, and that's why it took me so long to get the the good old, you know what, the to do this one. But yeah, so like other occult films that this reminds me of is like Red Dragon, and how the detective has to like sit there in the homes and like really understand the process and mindset of the killer. Um, Silence of the Lambs, obviously we have Buffalo Bill, who has like a face on his own face, another face, and wears people's skin and things like that. And I feel like Longlegs has that, wants that control to like have, create his own identity. He doesn't want the identity that's been given to him. He wants to create his own identity, much like all of these other killers, like Jason and Michael Myers. They all want to create their own identities, so they have these masks. And then something that I thought was really important is that she doesn't find out how to really solve this or become the matriarch, and actually start using her gun, until she is able to descend in this journey and then ascend, right? And so it's very much that as above, so below, or like descending into hell, and then that's how once you get there, you come out, and then you can make your ascension out. And it's very hero's journey about someone that has to like has a very controlling mother figure. It's like breaking out of your childhood. You were a child, and you're now trying to become an adult, and you have to leave and cleave, right? You have to leave your family's household and make your way in the world. And so so we see that once her mother, Ruth, shoots the doll head that looks like Lee. Lee passes out because of the breaking of the ball, the metal ball, right? And all of that. The frequency changes, especially for herself, and just whatever else is going on, whether it be hypnosis or occult, demonic powers. She falls to the ground. She goes unconscious. Her mother takes her to the basement, doesn't leave her in the house, doesn't leave her in her childhood room. Her mother's trying to get her to understand what's going on because her mother senses the end is coming. And so she's given all clues to Lee the entire movie, really, is what we see. Probably her entire childhood up to her adulthood, right? She takes her all the way to the basement. Mind you, Dale Cobble's dead. Longlegs, right? He's dead already. He killed himself. So there's no like he's going to return and find her there. She's trying to help her connect all the dots. So she knows that Lee is going to prevail. So Lee wakes up in the basement. She doesn't know where she is. And how you can grow up in a house for so long and never know that there's a basement or even go down there, I don't know. She wakes up. She looks around and she sees this workshop. She's like really figuring out what's going on. And then she hears the phone ringing. And she goes upstairs to get the phone. And I think the mother pre-recorded that and plays it. And she listens. And they're like, oh, you're late to Miss Ruby's birthday party, which is her supervisor's, Agent Carter's daughter. So she's like, oh my God, I gotta go. And she takes Dale Cobble's car and starts screaming and then gets to his house, right? And so it's just the idea of she had to descend and then ascend, right? Out. And now she's the mother figure. Now she's ready to stop Longlegs, to stop this curse that's happening, to stop this cycle and this hypnosis and brainwashing that's happening. And then we see just this idea of how her mother, yes, feels like she has to protect Lee Harker, but at the end, why does she feel like she has to kill Ruby? Does she feel like even in death, Dale Cobble is going to somehow come back and hurt Lee? Or is it just the fact that she knows she's going to make Lee kill her? She's already so guilty, tied up with guilt and grief about what she's been doing to all these families, that she attacks Ruby in order to, one, finish. Either she's guilty and feels guilty and she wants Lee Harker to kill her as a mercy killing, or she's completing the circle. Ruby's doll, they never crush the head. Ruby is still under this hypnosis. Because of the alchemy, because of the sound and frequency of the ball, because of all the science behind frequencies and sounds and smells and sulfurs and triggers of the brain, right? And like maybe chemicals. And so I just think that, yeah, it's just he, I think, wanted it to end that way. And even in death, he was able to get his goal accomplished. And that's why Agent Carter was somehow gravitated towards Lee Harker. I think it was all like his mastermind Longlegs mastermind plan. So I may have left some stuff out. I wanted to talk about a lot. I know that Mandy has these cult mothers. And then we also have cult mother in this movie. And I like how we have the 7 heads in Revelations 13:1. And then we have the 7th she, that Lee's mom was the 7th she. And so we think about who were all the she's before her. And then I wanted to talk the last thing about Ruth. The name Ruth is a biblical name. And so Ruth in the Bible, she marries someone and he dies. And so her and her mother-in-law's husband's also dead. And so it's just her and her mother-in-law. And so they end up moving to another place. And the only family they have is this powerful man who is her husband's cousin or something like that. And her mother-in-law says, if you want to secure this man and his protection for both of us, because we're not protected because we're 2 single widowed women, she's like, you need to uncover his feet and lay at the foot of his bed and lay there. And if he decides to, he'll take us in. And I think that's very obviously a metaphor, but the fact that even though that's just a metaphor in the Bible, right, for something else, Ruth, that name, comes into play here. Because Dale Cobble says that he's like, that she's the 7th she. She was to be given the same choice that they've all been given, crimson or clover. Accept the gift and destroy yourself and yourselves, or keep it and bow all the way down, and get right down to the dirty, dirty work that gets dirty as it cleans, like a mop, like a rag, right? So she has to submit. She's tied up and she's at his feet, tied up. And so it's a lot different. She's not submitting of her own volition. It's not complete mirror of each other, but the fact that she is a Ruth that submits to the power of Dale Cobble in order to protect her family. And it's not her mother-in-law, it's her daughter, but still, right? And so I thought that was really, really interesting that her name was Ruth, and the whole idea of like getting down and laying yourself down at the foot of this patriarch, so that way he could save you because he has power. So I thought that was the last thing that I thought was interesting. And instead of having a bargain with God, you're having a bargain with the devil. And so, yeah, I mean, I'm really impressed with the film. I didn't catch everything the first time. I caught it, a lot of it the second time. I knew that this review was going to be ever so long. And I love it. I mean, I'm really, really excited about seeing the rest of Osgood Perkins' films. His brother, I think, I told you, did the soundtrack. So check out Elvis Perkins. He goes by another name. His stage name is like Ziegler or something like that. And the Longlegs cinematography was done beautifully by a man named Andres Tinajero. And so Andres Tinajero is the cinematographer. And so check that out. He has other films that I'm sure are really, really great that he's done too. So I just wanted to see if you caught anything that I didn't catch. Please let me know, because I would like to discuss it with you. Leave it in the comments if you saw something that that I didn't catch. Please let me know. Like, if you know why they said tiger, let me know. If you know what the what is it called? Sorry, the beheaded cow, what that stands for, please let me know. I want to know what that means also. So yeah, I appreciate you so much for tuning in. I'm probably going to do this again on my Instagram, and or try and post like a little clip of this on my Instagram. But yeah, thanks so much. I really appreciate it. Happy Halloween to all you busy bees out there. This was an awesome film that had so many Easter eggs in it, that you really need to comb through it and see it a couple of times in order to realize what a masterpiece it is. The first time I saw it, I was just like, oh, this is good. Yeah, this is good. And then I saw it a second time because a friend of mine, old friend of mine, suggested that I should. He was like, no, you should probably see it again. So I went back, I saw it again. And from like almost the initial first scene, second scene or something like that, I realized how much I had missed. Really, when she's doing the Rorschach image test, that's when I realized how sick this fucking movie was. And not, I don't mean like about grossness. I mean, it does have a few gory parts, like probably more than a few gory parts. But really, I just mean like how sick this director is, as far as like just exquisite is what one person said, and I will concur. It's exquisite. I don't know how it would have been if he had not put that initial kind of first two scenes with the FBI and how she apprehends that man right before she takes her Rorschach image test. I don't know. I think that it would still be a great movie either way. But yeah, I appreciate it. Thank you so much for joining. And let me know in the comments what you thought about Longlegs, if you had caught all of the little details that I had caught, and if there's anything else that you really like. There are a few things that the director touched on in his interviews that I feel like I don't really have to touch on, because he was talking about like the white drained out of the color of the Ruth Harker's hair, out of Longlegs' hair, how just the vitality is lost when the person is committing these atrocious acts. They are no more this sanguine youth. They are no more this innocence. They are paradise lost. They are the pale, the pallor. And so I think that was really interesting. He didn't say it quite like that, but pretty close. So I want to hear more from you. And if you like this film, you let me know, because I loved this film. And it's probably one of my favorites of the past like 6 years, honestly, since Mandy was released. And I can see why Nicolas Cage wanted to switch roles. Instead of being the detective, instead of being the Avenger, he put himself in the place of the villain. And I know he was the Avenger in that movie Pig, also about the truffle pig. And so it's cool to see all of the indie films and really just these independent films that he is a part of, that he has been supporting. And it's just his palette, his wide palette, his wide range of movies that he chooses to do is just fantastic. And Perkins, I want to see more of his films in the future. And if you've seen the Black Coat's Daughter or any of his other films, let me know what you thought of those. And we're really excited, really excited to have this movie in our arsenal of movie analyses, movie critiques. Yeah, for all you cinephiles out there, check this one out. If you haven't seen it, you got to. Thank you so much. This is a Reading Rage Live, and she's alive. It's alive. Thanks so much, guys. Happy Halloween.